Welcome to T-Dub's Film Room, and today's episode is a special edition entitled Burning Questions with our host, Jack Galloway. So, Jack, I'll just kind of let you take it from here.
Sweet, yeah. So I'm Jack Galloway. I'm a lifelong Auburn fan, originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and most recently, as of this past May, an Auburn alum, which I'm proud of, and just excited to collaborate with Taylor, get you guys some of the burning questions around the Auburn, a couple players that we think best match the fit for these questions, and just kind of give our explanations why. And yeah. So first year's class, so the 2025 recruiting class, ended at number 8 in the country from a day one contributor standpoint. So a lot of what we learned from last year. I'll let you get away with your first pick, Taylor.
Yeah, so and talking with Jack, like the three guys, and as I was thinking, it got to 5 pretty quick. So I'll go 5 to 1 to suspense, even though I think if you've seen some of the older videos, 5 for me, and again, it's all in the context, the framework of like day one contributors, so not necessarily who's going to be, the best at Auburn or even the best is Elijah Melendez. So part of the thought here is like simply just looking at the depth chart. It's like and even like the prototypical Mike Backer, but at least he's 225 pounds, whatever. We need that guy. We need. Last year was they were serviceable. They were decent at that what that position calls for, which is hopefully like a run stopping guy that can take on an interior off 4 or 5 yards like we used to see with Cam Riley and some of those guys. We need that guy. We need KJ Britt. We need somebody like it. An inside run to a 2-yard gain instead of a 4-yard gain. Like that helps a ton. So, we've talked about the prospect. I mean, obviously my fear has been like the Wesley Steiner effect. So, Steiner tested off the charts. The sparks had. This is Steiner. So then when I'm looking at Melendez, the fear is, okay, you've got the when you got pads on, you're trying to think about what you're trying to do. It's just too much, and then it's like arms out, not able to like have your feet telling it's only inches that will make you miss a tackle, so that's the fear, and maybe that's just like a normal thing of, I mean, all these at the end of the day, you don't know exactly how they're going to. If it's 6'1", 225, he's already getting a lot of like good reports in terms of what he's doing in off-season workouts, and he's just a freak. So he's number 4, like a veteran inside linebacker. In the spring portal window, but I think he's got a really good shot of.
And when you look at this kid, you're gonna be like, how is he 18? How is he 17? Because I mean, this is one of the most built high schoolers you will see to catch up to that speed. I fully agree that it will not be the physicals that are lacking for him getting playing time early on. So if you want to go get a little more even there.
Yeah. Number 4 for me is Blake Woodby. Kind of perspective that I was looking at it for Melendez. the position really doesn't make sense. Like you probably look at our cornerback room and kind of all the different kind of aspects of that and got pretty thin pretty quick because it really ended up like as far as outside guys at the end of the year, you know, and Jay Crawford because we didn't have Kite. Obviously, I mean, you know, I don't think anybody expected Falston to play as early and really as often as he did. Even I think Amon Lane Gaines, they've proven commodities of Crawford and Lee, and then bringing in a guy like Strader, Tyler Scott, presumably getting back in the mix healthy. We didn't really see that next. You know, obviously Woodby's going to have some competition if we're talking straight outside corner, and that's assuming that like people don't get moved around. So like if K and Lee doesn't move into like a slot corner role, or of course he just kind of presents himself as like having a lot of leadership qualities. It's always when people interview him and like some, and I think the competition level that they're used to at St. Francis, the program, I'm assuming that, you know, that place has a lot of resources, all that stuff, the things that the program requires them to do from like even just like a time management perspective. I just feel like he's going to come in and be ready to go. He's got a lot of speed. Like they just can't really keep off the field for who he is, like on the intangible side of, you know, and then who he is on the tangible side as a football player. I mean, the relatives I gave him, he was a 5-star on ESPN. It's like, you know, so, but yeah, so Blake Woodby's number 4 for me.
For sure. When you go through and you watch his tape, you're seeing him play against some of the best high schools, the best high school quarterbacks, the best high school receivers, both going to be high-level contributors either at the SEC level or at the Big Ten level, the two highest fields of play in our sport. Catches, I think it was 3 catches for 22 yards that entire game, for more, and like that wasn't even them traveling up to St. Francis competition. A lot of what you see from guys in schools like Thompson and Grayson that Auburn fans are probably a little more familiar with, of traveling to the IMGs, traveling that will translate well for him, of just like, I don't know that there will definitely be a bump in that speed.
Yeah.
But I think he's almost kind of in between level of high school and college, to where if you can get him out there and he's demanding the snaps the way that I think we both press now, and being able to get the reps that we've seen for guys like Kenzie Paulson, for guys like, especially for Jay Crawford, who were able to go. Even saw it this year as pushed Antonio out of the starting role reps, because of how quickly he was able to play calls at a high level, even having to look at so many different kinds of offenses, having to travel so consistently, and just go through all of that as a key. And really all of the St. Francis guys carry themselves. It's much more professional like than you will see from a lot of high schoolers. I think that will benefit them, and understanding that these guys are going to be putting in work. They're at Auburn now. They're going to get these spring reps, but even before then, in this dead period in February, I know for a fact all this, I fully expect Woodby Island to be one of our staples going forward and a household name sooner than not.
Yeah. Let's see, different guys. But I landed on Antonio Coleman. I even thought about Darian Smith. I just think they're going to have somewhat of like similar roles, obviously, at least starting out to me, because I think he'll end up getting to 290, 295. Malik Blockton came in, and I think he got up to 285, 290, probably by the Coleman, because I'm sure he's 265 or so right now. He just has so much twitch and power. And that's why I mentioned Darian Smith. Vontrell, that's actually what he said about Darian Smith is as far as being a guy that can provide pass rush from the inside, sooner rather than later as a young player, as I see him as a guy that, like, if it's second 8 plus, of course, on third and long situations, having him out to a gap, you stand up backers like a DeMarcus Riddick and Bryce Diaz, maybe, some speed at the linebacker.
Yeah.
So, like, if you kind of give them that double mug type look, you had Coleman as a 3-tech, maybe even Falk as the other 3-tech, and then you have edge guy. To me, seems pretty scary, So, twitch and power, pass rushing ability. Saraland is good competition as well. They're higher classification ball. I think, again, you could probably go a few different directions there, but I think he's got. I think he'll be ready to go. Sooner maybe than like
I agree with that. I definitely like that comparison to Malik Blockton and the things we saw during the offseason coming in for spring then enabled him in the fall to definitely agree that we could see that very quickly for Antonio Coleman. I think this is a guy that Auburn fans definitely felt very different about. It was the whole snips here now, and I think since that final commitment, he's been probably one of the more locked in guys for the Auburn class. And so I did do the talking. So I'm definitely excited to see where that goes for him. So my number 2 might be a little definitely and this guy, and more just how blown away I was watching the tape of my number 1 guy. But number 2, I'm going to have Anquan Fagans. Easy to project him out of them right now. That room hasn't been phenomenal the past couple of years, especially since losing guys like a Nehemiah Pritchett to the NFL draft. But so much football IQ. You can tell that, like, he sees something even as simple as a screen and just knows how to position himself, how to have it be a negative play. And I think that we've definitely been lacking that in some aspects of just really heady, good football players. I think we started out at least half the season without even missing a tackle. Was one of the more consistent safeties in all of football as a freshman. And I think a lot of that goes back to Thompson. Fagans is just all that much more talented, even just off the rip in some ways, than Caleb Harris. And I think them getting an opportunity to play some together again. His baseline is Caleb Harris. The ceiling that he has, there's no way to keep him off the field. I think the coaches are just going to have Caleb Harris as well.
It feels like he's essentially like on the field kind of intangible properties as far as football IQ and like diagnosing what the offense is trying to do, being in the right position, which was the biggest reason that he had a lot of success. But so what you kind of hope is with Fegans is he's got all that stuff of metrics and athleticism, and as far as just like testing stuff. And we haven't had, to your point, Auburn has not had a roaming middle of the field and say that NFL projected type guy. I mean, you know who I think about honestly is Stephen Roberts.
Okay, yeah.
You know, Stephen Roberts was the guy, you know, because really at that Roberts, you know, Jeremiah Denson, that would just, it didn't matter who was field, who was boundary as much. If you motion from the, you know, from the boundary to the center field safety or whatever. But Roberts was a guy to me that was more fluid, just like more of that like roaming free safety was at Alabama. You know, like Hawk and Dix was at Alabama. I mean, they had a ton of them.
Yep.
So we had it, and presumably, so yeah, I mean, because kind of the box hitters, I mean, even Daniel Thomas, that's how he projected, you know, to the NFL, obviously. Number 2 for you, just say it, he's number 1 for me. I can cover my number 2 guy, and then you can talk about your number 1 guy. I'm interested to see actually if they're the same. Is that it? Okay.
Yep.
So,
exactly.
And I think it makes a lot of sense because, again, even similar to like the Melendez conversation, this can even be more of that, like it's a position of need. We don't have really a nose tackle besides Dallas Walker, you know, who we brought in from West Kentucky. But you have to have more than one guy. I mean, God forbid an injury happen, of course, as well, but you have to have guys roll in and roll out. And then I think Crawford, you know, get in from USC by way of A&M. He was 22. I can blank on his name right now. But, you know, he was a nose tackle, defensive end, 3-tech to 5-tech quite a bit as well. Especially when we're in like true 3-down like personnel, where you wanted maybe lighter personnel on the back end on the second and third level. So I think Crawford will do some of that too. Like I would imagine we'll see him move around a little bit because I think he's got the athleticism. I'm pretty sure he was the one that at the beginning of his or actually it was his teammate Rodney Cleveland at the beginning of his tape had King Kong, you know, as like in this first year, come in and just get your hands on the center and try to two-gap that thing, and then where those guards that are double teaming trying to climb up to the second level to get their hands on backers, especially our, you know, smaller, faster linebackers. There are many offensive linemen as you can with the frame and the strength that you have and let those guys run free. He's going to be able to do that. He can do that right now for him.
Yeah. And a lot of the things that you said are, even if it doesn't have King Kong or Godzilla in the beginning of it, I mean, I think one of the first clips is him basically suplexing a running back against really, really solid talent across the state. And I mean, you instantly see just how strong he is, especially when he's going against those guards and centers. Like, I mean, there are times when he's got two guys latched onto him and he just has around the quarterback, around the running back, they are going to the ground. He's sneaky athletic. The first guy that came up to me and like the size and everything actually matches up is a guy where if you need a yard on the goal line and you don't trust one of these running backs, you don't trust Arnold or Deuce or whoever, you give it to 325. He did that to Parker.
Let him be a lead blocker. Like, let him be a lead blocker. Blunders we've had like the last 2 seasons with Freeze, and we've had a lot of them, whether it be on the goal line or somewhere. That slot eye, position, just follow him. I mean, I would love to see some of that. That'd be great.
More of those options. And I mean, we even saw some willingness for similar things this past year from Hugh with Tate Johnson basically into an athlete like Jordan Crawford. You just find the ways to get him out there. And I think just his pure athleticism and strength that he has coming into the ability to get on the field early. But I think just having the athletic frame and the ability and even just like doing some of that stuff possible onto the field, which for any of these freshmen is the biggest thing. It's just where can we use you?
Yeah, I love him. Antonio Coleman, would be at 4, Antonio Coleman 3, Jordan Crawford 2, and I had, new boy Fagans at number 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I heard at 1.
So that was our 25 day 1 contributors. What's up?
So second question, we have the winter window, and there will be some new guys in spring. But from the winter window, will have the greatest impact on winning this year.
Yeah. So my pick is Xavier Chaplin. There's stats to my position on that. We didn't give up a ton of sacks last year, like relative, just like now, a lot of teams are a lot worse than we are. Oklahoma being one of them, with all their situations. So, like, to me, it's not as much about there's no sacks or like just sacks number or even pressures, for like PFF or whoever tries to tally that kind of stuff up. Again, we've covered anybody watching this. If you go find a clip of him losing a rep, like, please share it with me, because I've watched well over 100 snaps of him, and I promise you I haven't seen him lose his matchup. But like in the past game, I don't see him lose reps. So
yeah,
I mean, there's so many strategic, schematic things, like an actual potential first-round draft pick. If your protection, it's almost like a corner, like what you can do if you feel good about it, like, verbiage that people will use. If you feel good about Xavier Chaplin just not losing his one-on-one matchup, then maybe that allows you to slot in on the right side of the line, where we might need more help. And so it's not just the left tackle in his matchup line that may be able to, you may be able to cheat a little bit because he can just take care of his man. I feel good about the offensive line in general. Like, of the offseason, I mean, I think our roster's in a better position now than like it's been in a very long time. Just top to bottom across the board, but like offensive line, you just think left guard, presumably Dylan Wade. And then you've got guys that are emerging. I mean, Braden Joyner played a ton of snaps last year. You got starting to blossom. We could even see that with some of the limited snaps he got. At center, obviously, you've got Lou, and then you've got your next man up with Kale Ellis, and he's going to be ready. At right guard, you'll have right tackle, you've got Tutal Miller and Mason Murphy. Two guys that started every game. So I mean, I think the offensive line is going to be better. But just having that guy, it's almost like in the NFL. As a Houston fan, you got Laramie Tunsil. It's like, okay, now the rock. Where if you don't have a left tackle, you're kind of screwed. That's just the confidence that it gives me again in all of that it means for Chaplin's matchups. For me, I think, of course, you could have went a lot of different ways, but I think, that he's number one for me in terms of transfer impacting winning.
Everything that you said is incredibly true, especially the diversification and the solidification that it gives. Now have the ability, because you have the most important spot filled, honestly, besides center, which you knew was going to be filled, in that blind side blocker, which the confidence that should be able to instill for Jackson Arnold coming from the situation that he was in. I think that alone will contribute to winning. That so many of the traits that we brought him in for show through. I did have Chaplin at number one as well, so I'll go to my number two, and I think this is a little bit of Southern Miss. I think he could have a huge impact on winning this year, even if he does not being the guy to start. And honestly, sounds of it, and from watching some miss, I really don't know that it was on him as much as it was in or around this. Having a guy that 59-yarder in college has gone through those pressures towns, or if there's been some recently pretty solid reporting on McPherson, and I really hope he's able to come back. But just having somebody in the second string kicker of a school that no longer exists, in the Iron Bowl and in these huge games, and he hit some huge kicks against A&M, but that had more consistency at that position. You see a greater ability in games like the Missouri game, especially the Iron Bowl this past year, to games and put so much on the offense and especially on the quarterback to touchdown or bust. Because I think even if he doesn't necessarily play, I think if we know that he's not playing, it's because guys has really shown out, and we typically like to feel about our kickers, because that, despite everything else can go, the kicking is always pretty consistent. We could just find no consistency there.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. Depth, and maybe when you were looking at Connor's stats, you saw this. You want to take a guess at Southern Miss last year?
They were probably 2-10.
They were 0-12. Their closest deficit will get any closer than 10 out like every game. I'm just looking at this right now, so that was crazy.
Oh god.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's really like context of like maybe it just helps us with competition. You know, when McPherson's back out there, that means that he was able to beat out.
Yeah, and we can go ahead and try to find some variety there.
Let me just say this too. I do want to, because we're going to have a lot of off-season stuff. Jackson Arnold really is the answer.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like, I mean, what if you didn't get him?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, presumably we were going to get somebody, and I'll justify whatever takes I have on him, but like, I think he's good. He wasn't the Elite 11 winner and a 5-star plus and everything that he was in high school because he's not talented. I mean, you know, those guys typically don't fail in the way that, you know, you can see what happened typically for guys of that caliber, prospects of that caliber, that bad. So again, the answer really is Jackson Arnold there. Liger Chaplin, obviously, for all the reasons we said, is also, you know, that level of pick.
I think if you were to just plugged in Jackson Arnold to this offense, I think maybe you could project doing a little better that will instill in him will be a huge factor in him passing what we've had quarterback play wise the last 5 years at Auburn. At those high school tapes, like he's not getting pressured to the same level as at Oklahoma. He's probably not throwing to his fourth, fifth, and reliable target. Like he's finally going to be able to get back to having NFL talent at receiver, having the depth of it as well, but also him to hopefully be who he was when he earned all those accolades, because that just doesn't disappear. You're exactly right.
And there's a good kind of context 2024 Jackson Arnold, and you dropped him in place of Peyton Thorne. Like Peyton Thorne will cover all this stuff too, but like Peyton Thorne at times did, he was kind of true freshman receivers that we had to lean on. You know, like some of those Cam Coleman, you know, deflections off of his hands that resulted in interception and replaced Peyton Thorne. But like, it's almost kind of a nice, you know, Peyton Thorne is the older guy, and last year we weren't a playoff team anyway, right? No matter who we had. A lot of those failures were kind of on Peyton Thorne's shoulders that were really more of just like an organic product of growing pains that that we depended on from the get-go, essentially. Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons. We didn't have the best personnel at the offensive line, you know, especially relative to what we think we're going to have this year. It is kind of an interesting thought experience. Jackson Arnold have looked that much different than, I wouldn't even say he would have looked better than Peyton Thorne for sure with at Oklahoma by missing all his receivers and the offensive line issues, and then the, you know, offensive coordinator getting fired, all that kind of stuff. But I do think there's going to be a massive difference he would have walked into last year. But
for sure. Yeah. this video, but and it's kind of a fun question because it's something that Auburn fans have really been able to think about for a little outside even a little bit of. But who will be Auburn's next first round pick?
So there's Jackson Arnold is going to be draft eligible next year. The next first round pick you would hope is in 20. So you got Jackson Arnold, you've got guys like Damari Austin, Brandon Frazier, Eric Singleton is going to be drafted here. Austin Murphy, Keyron Crawford, presumably Chris Kelly, was it C.K. Murray? His name? The edge. We got Avis, Alice Walker, Robert Woodyard, in the back end, Kayan Lee, Rayon Straight, juniors, I believe, draft eligible guys. But so that's just kind of like your bulk list of names to consider. The obvious ones are the obvious ones. I mean, of course, if Jack's going to be first round pick in next year's draft, it would be irresponsible really to project that. So I'm kind of leaving him up. Xavier Chaplin and then Patrick Falk. So I'm really thinking about those three guys. If we look at Keldrick Falk specifically, all right, in this case, there's not that many NFL mock drafts. Walker Football is one that does. They had him as the number 6 pick in the 20. That's a lot higher than I honestly. One thing for me from Keldrick Falk, I do think, especially with NIL, and it's like Derek Brown was, that, if there's any thought that he could come back, have a nice NIL setup, obviously he could come back for his 4th year, even though he maybe doesn't now. If he's projected as a top 10 pick, he'd probably have to go. But if he's, a 5 that could come back for his last year, so I am taking that into consideration. Eric Singleton, receivers. Let's just look at receivers. We had Brian Thomas from LSU, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Purcell, and does Eric Singleton project to any of those guys? Not really, except for Xavier Worthy. The rest of these were, bigger receivers. Solidified as a first round pick for next year's draft. And so that kind of leaves me with, and I did look on another site, I don't have it pulled up, but in this site, and again, all that stuff's kind of arbitrary, but so, he is being considered within that top group of receivers that are going to be eligible next year. The answer to this question, if you look at that same Walter Football mock draft, they had Hayden Proctor as the number 4 overall pick, and slow. He's a monstrous guy, and he was a 5-star and all that, which was Chaplin's when we did the whole breakdown anyway. For Emmanuel Iheanacho, pretty bad college career and like still getting drafted in the first round because he's, 6'8", 350. Xavier Chaplin and the, increased exposure playing in the SEC this year and playing the best guys first round draft pick, that constant game film. I'm barring it, whatever. I get it because we just haven't had that guy. But like, Virginia Tech to Auburn, like, I think he is going to be for sure a first round pick in next year's draft. So that's the answer to this question. I would not be shocked if the top 15 pick in 2026. And I know that's crazy, but that's just what I see on film.
As well. I mean, you see, like, this year's draft, there will be probably 4 to 6 tackles in the first round, and that's a trend that we've seen over the past. High level of ability to play left tackle, where that's going to be the blind side in so many of these NFL teams. It's just going to be it's always a position of need. It's so crucial, and it's so expensive of a position where if you have a top 10, if you love the type of Chaplin, to go out and just draft him and like shape him into what you really want out of that position. I also think that I think it'll be a battle between him and Kelly. I think Kelly has shown a lot. Like, if the Jaguars are picking high again, I would say he's going wherever they're picking because they love athletic. It's just so hard to find. Him being at least listed on our roster at 6'6", 288, Georgia, who is a pretty consensus, probably top 12 pick this year, where it's like he had some good flashes. He wasn't this super, super dominant player where he could be a game changer and a disruptor. But his roles and what teams will project from him. That they will have seen from Keldrick of being able to shift around and play in so many different looks down to higher between two positions of huge amounts of value in the NFL in terms of quarterback, offensive tackle, and those are the money positions. Those are where you want to get yourself that 4th and 5th year to not be paying these guys so much money, especially by the time Keldrick he starts for the way that we're seeing guys like Derek Hall start to project top defensive. He could easily be a fun attributes, all of the upside. Same for Chaplin. I mean, we're seeing tackles get some chance to just kind of battle it out among their own ranks to see who can be the number 1, number 2, number 3 defensive end or offensive tackle, both of them in those conversations and to be in that top 15 range. I had Singleton as my 3rd as well, and I mean, it's just from it with guys like how Schwartz and John Ross and some of these pure speed guys have turned out in the league. The team's just be the guy that is like worthy, that can come and has good hands and can actually utilize that speed, or find a way to have him catch it. It didn't matter. Singleton, take kind of that spot of if he can show that speed will play. I think if any numbers come out from him testing, if any of like the off-season stuff leaks of like whatever, there's going to be some real internal conversations of how long are we going to be able to keep him if he has a KLS level, even like kind of what we've always looking for, that game-breaking speed, and especially in a guy that's a little bigger than what you typically see from the speedsters. I think did want to cover in this question that kind of shifts the parameter with some young guys that just even on paper without next wave, because all three next to in some of these cases down the line, in terms of like these guys could for sure be first round picks. From the 32 draft, we're typically seeing pure centers lead picks a lot. So I definitely think he's worth kind of that honorable mention. But then obviously your Cam Coleman's, your Malcolm, I want to even just have some fun and pure, like we haven't even seen him really spin it. If Deuce just with that amount of stuff, was worth the top 6. If he can do it and can really he's probably like 6'5", 215 right now. If he can play at that weight, then he is definitely a guy that I would see Vincent may form this guy into a
And like the young guy, there were 3 things, partly, and you kind of talked about as well, the guys that we talked about with Chaplin, Falk, and looked so ESPN's draft. The only offensive tackle, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4 pick that was actually drafted, like below their ranking. So again, this is all ESPN ranking. Jones was drafted well above their overall ranking. Position,
for sure.
You know, importance of Lathan at 11, he was ranked 17th. Talisi Fuaga was ranked 26th, and he was drafted 14th. So like, in the even trying to meet the lofty expectations in 2023. So again, it's saying he didn't look that great on film in 2023, and an injury cut short his workout at an elite. So he was drafted number 11. 6'3", 312, really athletic, and had some decent film, in 2012. And just to highlight the fact that, like, Xavier Chaplin he looks like a guy that's really well. I think he has the really good pass, really high. Trayvon Walker, everybody's saying that first overall pick. 4 double is really good. The 3 cone 689 is really good. I think Keldrick projects as that type of tester. No way Keldrick's going to run up. And I do think his size is interesting. So like comes in at 6'5", 285, or 6'6". And even front strong side end or an odd front defensive end, kind of what he plays for us. The team like him. I think it's going to be team specific, which makes a prospect slot. And the last, again, if we looked at last year, Xavier Worthy, but Xavier Worthy extremely productive. Like the extent that I was looking 2021, 2022, 2023, he had productive. In 2023, he had 75 catches for 1,000 yards. 2021 and 56 catches last year, only 3 touchdowns. So, and apparently he's a little shorter. He's a little stockier than Worthy. But, Worthy ran a 4.21. Is he going to run a 4.25 or is he going to run like a 4.34? Because pre-draft fever that will build out relevant in terms of, those 3 guys. What you touched on with like younger guys, I mean, Kim Coleman got the hot end Jackson Arnold other than tonight. Because if a quarterback hits, they're going to get taken very, very early. But as far as position, it's just so interesting because it's like we have no idea what he should not have been as productive as he was last year. He hit to Auburn until the summer. And a guy that didn't even play full-time receiver in high school, and a guy that didn't play against necessarily the best competition level that we've seen from some of these. It's not linear, right? Like that happens all the time, especially in the NFL. CJ Stroud, he looks. So a lot of these guys that played last year, it's going to be extremely interesting to see their development because it's just like this, like it goes on, college. So he's fascinating. Riddick's fascinating because, he's a little smaller, but that is going to help now. So if he's like a true lockdown corner for 2 more years, next year, 2025 and 2026. So, there's a ton of guys as true freshmen that, like Fegans would be really high one.
Yep.
All those defensive linemen, depending on who hits. I mean, Jared Smith is like you couldn't be any more, intriguing on an edge defender than what he's got. So, it's going to be crazy, kind of watching these guys and see who is able to stand out with all the.
For sure, and I think the exciting thing there is with all of this younger talent around him, even with just some of the transfer talent, and he continues to just look like one of the best players on the whole defense, on that defense. And then same with Chaplin. for him, but then for guys doing just the right tackle, Jutal Miller, who like, and obviously we know that size is not everything from what happened with anybody on that line, Jeremiah Wright included, that NFL scouts are going to be able to look at, and if they show that film well and they look good along a guy I already thought of, that like that can't boost maybe not to first round picks, but like I wouldn't be surprised if through that Dylan Wade and Wright are now they're watching so much more, and because they're able to do so much more on that improved line, which does kind of get also back into that the greatest impact of winning previous question time at Auburn, as try not to book or barn or any whatever you want to. It's hard not to get excited about the upside and can make you think like, yeah, we could see Auburn highlights in the first round of the draft. Though this past year, but like they were probably framed as he was there and was fine, and then went to Oregon. It's just Auburn getting to show that we can develop and that we are still very relevant in the NFL space beyond just guys that over contribute for their draft.
And this will be the last bit, and we can kind of close it off for today. But that ultimately, and again, that's the thing that's more stuff to get into in the offseason as well. It's just like the perspective shift of Auburn fans. Like when we think a guy's good, if he's not like a mid or earlier round draft pick, he's not as good as we have thought, that he is. And that's why we're not able to compete against the class of college football that we want to compete against, because we haven't had guys that, are getting drafted in the first 4 rounds. Like,
Marcus Harris is kind of a good example. We thought Marcus Harris was great. Like he's a practice player, and he was a late draft pick or undrafted even. I'm not even sure, but like, even going all the way back. So there's just a bunch of cases like that where we think guys are pretty good. Alabama's and all these guys, those are the players that get drafted in the first. But yeah, I think for today that's good. Jack, obviously I appreciate it. We're gonna make more of these type videos as well. So be on the lookout.
Just excited to keep this going. If y'all have any questions that you want to see specifically answered, drop them in the comments and we'll watch for those and try to incorporate them. That would be great. Looking forward to continuing the offseason, doing more, hopefully answering more your burning questions.
Yep. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.